Royals organization at the time, and yes, I remember Marc very well.
Well, I might coax him on camera to ask a question a little bit later, but he's my old broadcast buddy, and he just tuned in. He wanted to say hello to you. He remembered seeing
Well, I
you.
appreciate it. I do appreciate it. It's very nice to be remembered.
Oh, you're definitely remembered, my friend. I mean, I think about that game. I mean, your slash line, 5 innings, 2 runs, and your team won the game. In today's day and age, that's considered, you've done your job. You threw over 100 pitches. I mean, how do you compare the 1973, 1974, like that mid-'70s era to, like, today? Like when you threw 5 innings, were you, like, just kind of glad to get out of there and you did your job? Or were you thinking, maybe I can get all the 9 in before this game's over?
I do not like the way today's game has gone in that, probably not going to be long and starting pitching will be by the wayside. Everybody will go 3 innings and get out of there. I don't know how they'll have to change the rules because there'll be no winning pitcher. But back then, what I started, I wanted to finish. In no way, shape, or form did I ever want to come out of a game.
So you wanted to keep guys like Mr. Littell unemployed because you didn't want that bullpen coming in.
Well, I didn't mind them coming in the 8th or the 9th, but not in the 6th. Not in the 6th. I wanted him to be able to throw again the next night. You bring him in the 5th or the 6th, and nowadays the guys won't even throw that long. But if you did, they'd probably be done for the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, you were issued number 32 by the Texas Rangers. Was that part of the whole hype thing where you were going to be the next Sandy Koufax, or was that a number you wanted on your own?
Well, actually, are you there?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, we're all here.
I'm sorry. I'm on a Bluetooth, and we're going through a thunderstorm here in Houston, so bear with me. But actually, the number I wanted was the number 18. It was not available at that time. They didn't even tell me that it could be available or whatever for a price. Not that I would have necessarily done that. But once 18 was no longer available, I immediately went to 32.
Let's talk about some other numbers, and I don't want to put David in a bad spot, but he finished his first year with a 5.01 ERA. He went 4-8. Littell will probably agree with this, that when David was managed by the Hall of Famer Whitey Herzog, Whitey wanted to give him some seasoning in the minor leagues. I think that would have been best for David. I'm sure David would concur with that. But that never happened. And
no, because Mr. Bob Short needed to make money, and
yep.
he looked at David as a meal ticket.
That's correct.
Well, Bob was definitely hurting for money. It wasn't so much that he needed to make money. What he needed to do was prove to Texas investors that baseball was a viable option against the Cowboys. And that's what we did, is that we proved that baseball could do to the area what the Cowboys had done for years.
Well, you started very, very well the next year. You speak about being viable. You started 3-0, and then curiously, the late Billy Martin, he didn't pitch you for 30 consecutive games. And your ERA that year went down to 4.38, but you ended with 9 straight losses. And, it's still a head-scratcher to me and a lot of people. I'm sure yourself. I mean, your best year in the bigs was probably when you went 8-11 for the Tribe in 78. You damaged your rotator cuff in 79 when you were 3-4, and you were out of baseball by 81. I should say that David is, he's not totally out of baseball because he is now the pitching coach. Are you still the pitching coach for the Houston Miracles, David?
Well, I am the pitching coordinator with them. I try to instruct young men on how to pitch and, how to avoid maybe some of the pitfalls that befell me. I also manage one of our 18-year-old teams, which we go around to college venues and play what they call showcase events, a little round-robin type deal with 3 or 4 other teams. And we know at least one college coach will be there from the school we're playing at, and hopefully 2 or 3 others from area schools, so that the boys might have an opportunity.
I should add that you skippered the Miracles 18 and under squad, I think, to the 2008 Connie Mack World Series in New Mexico.
Well,
right?
I was very blessed to have a lot of talent. My opinion of a manager is put the guys out there in the best position to succeed and then try not to screw it up.
Well, that's, I wish more people would subscribe to that theory. Now, the Houston Miracles, folks, if you did not know, are a faith-based baseball and softball academy that was founded by Mike Harris in 1999. David himself was raised as an Episcopalian, but he found faith when he was with the Indians. Andre Thornton, the slugging first baseman, was the Christian leader on that team, and he routinely had Sunday prayer groups. So
absolutely. Andy's great people, and probably due to the times did not receive near the recognition or the thanks from his fellow players.
Well, I know you have always received the thanks from yours truly and people such as Gary Neibauer, people such as Tom Bruno. In other words, this is my ham-handed segue, if you haven't guessed, ladies and gentlemen, leading into David Clyde being probably, arguably, the most famous MLB player who played prior to 1980 who's not getting a pension. David was 37 game days shy of a pension. And, I have, for the past 9 years, tried to advocate for men like David. I'm happy that my co-host, Mark Weiss and Mark Littell and a lot of other people are now joining the bandwagon. But, David, why don't you, in your own inimitable words, tell people what this is all about and why do you feel so strongly that, you're being shafted?
Well, first and foremost, Doug, there is not enough that can be said about what you have done for the cause, because without you, I don't think we would have moved any further than we had 25 years prior to that. So all of this is as a great thanks to you, Doug. So I can't say enough. Kudos to you. God bless you. I'm sure there's a great treasure in heaven laid up for you, because you have gone out of your way.
We told you this. I've never told anyone else. But David Clyde, on April 21st, 2011, ladies and gentlemen, called me after MLB and the Players Union announced this award agreement of $625 for every 43 game days a man had accrued in terms of service time. And after all these years, I still have that voicemail, and it's something I will always treasure. And my 10-year-old daughter, now David's got 4 kids. David's got, if I'm doing the math correctly, a 41-year-old son named Ryan, a 35-year-old son named Reed, a 34-year-old daughter named Lauren, and, I'm sorry, you've got a 20-year-old grandson named Preston Warren.
He's actually only 18, so don't make me any older than I already am.
But we don't want to do that. I'm already embarrassed to know that people now know know that you're 63 and I'm 58. But
Yeah, I'm keeping mine a secret.
yeah.
But I am very proud of being 63 because I intend to be 64, 65, and obviously the good Lord has something still in store for me here on earth.
Yeah, oh, he absolutely does. Because the person I want to celebrate with when, not if, when this wrong is righted, is living in, pardon me, humble Texas.
Humble.
Humble.
Well,
Humble.
You're home. You're a homie.
Yeah. Make a long story short, my 10-year-old daughter finally heard this voice message because she was only 3 years old, and she says, "You know, Dad, Mr. Clyde sounds like a real nice guy." And I said, "Jovi, he really, really is." So, Mark, why don't you just jump on in and ask David all about this ridiculous situation, you know, in which he should be the poster child, and he is. But practically speaking, you know, David Clyde, Gary Neibauer, Tom Bruno, Carmen Fanzone, Steve Gurley, we're all going to war, and nobody, and when I say that, I mean no one named Rob Manfred or Tony Clark or our good buddy Steve Rogers. You know, before you jump in, let David tell you the famous story about what he did to Steve Rogers at a Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association meeting in Houston, Texas.
Really, I don't mean to argue with you on that one, but it wasn't Steve that I set fire to. It was his boss, Don Fair.
Oh.
And so we had a meeting here in Houston, and we had been told it was a meeting of the Alumni Association and a special meeting of the group that I was part of with Gary Neibauer, Craig Skoke, and Eddie Robinson, and myself were the front of this thing. No matter what the rest of the association wants to say, they wanted nothing to do with it. But Dan Foster, whoever the guy's picture was taken when this agreement was I think pitched for the Senators, he was no more involved in it than the man in the moon. But these guys have egos the size of the earth, and it's not big enough for all of us. So we had this meeting in Houston, and we were led all along to believe by Dan Foster that, you know, we were told Don was coming to talk to us and he was going to address the situation. Well, we're 2 days into the meeting, and we're about to wrap it up, and they're opening up for comments and questions. So I raised my hand to be recognized. I was recognized, and from that point forward, I just asked very poignant questions, I thought. I asked Don, I said, "Why are you here?" And he wanted to dance around, you know, to talk about pensions. That nothing had been said at that point about the non-vested. And I said, "Well, why are you here?" I kept, "Why are you here? Give me a straightforward answer." And at that point, I went after Dan at that point. I said, "Dan, you told us Don was coming here to address us on this matter." I said, "We haven't done anything yet. We've danced around this issue." I said, why can't somebody tell us why nothing's being done? Nothing's being done. For the same reason you can't get return phone calls from Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred still is upset about, you know, he can say all he wants. So prior to this meeting in Houston, we'd met in New York with Rob Manfred, and by the way, if Michael Werner, the former head of the Players Association, had not been involved in this, I don't think it ever comes to pass either. But we're sitting down in a meeting room at the Players Association in New York City, and Manfred's sitting at one end, Werner's sitting at the other, a couple of us on each side of the table, Steve Rogers and everything, and the first words out of Rob Manfred's mouth is, "I'm over the lawsuit. I'm all over that and everything. Doesn't have anything to do with it." Well, I'm sorry if you're over it, why are you mentioning it?